Good afternoon, everybody. We are live. I am sorry for the delay. I was on the phone with a client. Business comes first. Had to take care of it. But we are back. We are here for the sentencing in the trial regarding the death of Ethan Liming, which is the trial of the Stafford brothers, Deshawn Stafford and Tyler Stafford. If you guys weren't aware, they were on trial for manslaughter and multiple types of assault. And yes, everything okay? Oh, really? Aw. Anyway, they were charged with manslaughter and multiple types of assault. They were found. The one brother, the older brother, Deshawn, was found guilty of felony assault and misdemeanor assault. The younger brother, Tyler, was found guilty of misdemeanor assault only. That means that the younger brother faces only 180 days in jail. The older brother faces 18 months in prison, possibly. Now, when it comes to the counts of involuntary manslaughter, both brothers were found. There was no verdict. It was a hung jury. So that is what happened there. And those are up for retrial. And you'll find out in this hearing whether or not those are going to be retried. Everybody's saying, tell the sweetie we say hello. Oh, they're saying hello. She says hi. She says, hi. You guys didn't know that's what gay horses eat too. Hi. So we're going to get started with this. You're going to see me fast forward around because there's like a whole hour of like nothingness. So just hang tight with me, guys. 1 second here. And we'll grab this and get it going. All right, here we go. As you can see, we had to skip 44 minutes into this, just running dead air.
Good afternoon, everyone. Please be seated. This is State of Ohio versus Deshawn Stafford and Tyler Stafford, 2022-07-2498, defendants A and B. Both Mr. Staffords have been previously convicted of various charges. Defendant A, Deshawn Stafford, has been convicted of aggravated assault, a felony of the 4th degree, and assault, a misdemeanor of the 1st degree. Tyler Stafford has been convicted of assault, a misdemeanor of the 1st degree. We are set for sentencing this afternoon. I did order pre-sentence investigations. I have seen those, and I will look to counsel to confirm that you have received those pre-sentence investigations as well. Ms. Shooky, on behalf of the state?
We have it.
Okay. Mr. Deshawn Stafford is present in court in the custody of.
So real quick, the pre-sentence investigation report, guys, they call them PSIs here in Ohio. They are done by the probation department. They sit down and because really all the judge has at this point is a bunch of papers in a file. Doesn't know anything about the Stafford brothers, doesn't know anything about their, family life, mental health, their upbringing, their education, their work history, all those things that would give the judge a basic idea about what's going on in their lives. She needs to know so she can shape a proper sentence. So that's what she's talking about. And she's asking if there's anything to correct. Nobody's objecting to that. So now we're getting to the sentencing.
The sheriff, represented by Attorney John Sin. Mr. Sin, have you seen that PSI?
I have, Your Honor.
And Mr. Tyler Stafford is present in court, represented by Attorney Don Gallick. Mr. Gallick.
Saw it and heard it.
All right. Very good. If you're speaking, if you could all just make sure that your mics are on so that everyone who is here remotely can also hear. We are, I assume, counsel prepared to proceed to sentencing at this time. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Very well. Anything on behalf of the state as an initial matter? I know that there has been a request that the defendants go first as to their sentencing arguments. Anything further? Okay. All right. Very good then. Why don't we start with defendant A, Deshawn Stafford, Mr. Sin?
Normally, defense goes after the
Thank you,
state,
Your
but this is a little weird. Why is the one brother in handcuffs? Because he's in custody. If you guys remember, at the end of the trial, his bond was revoked because he had kept violating bond. And at that point, he had been found guilty of a felony, so the judge took him into custody. So he's currently in custody. He's wearing a jumpsuit. The other brother's wearing street clothes. But yeah, if you're in custody, your cuffs don't come off. The sheriffs won't uncuff you completely. That's a normal thing. But that's a good question.
May it please the court. This is a very emotional day, Judge. Obviously, it's very emotional. We've got a lot at stake. But there are certain formalities that we need to discuss just to set expectations here. My client, Deshawn Stafford, was found guilty of a fourth-degree felony. He's currently in custody. And he's going to be given an appeal because that's what we do. We give appeals after a finding. So that's going to happen, even though as the defense counsel, at the same time, I'm thanking the court for what I consider to be a fair trial. Everybody got to speak. I can't sit here in good faith and say that you don't know what happened, or you didn't get the full gist of this, or that we didn't get our day in court, because frankly we did. But there's going to be an appeal. I won't be the lawyer for that, but there will be an appeal. There always is. And we're at a point now where the victim's family, Ethan's family, is looking for my client to take some responsibility and my client to acknowledge what happened here and his role in this. And I will tell you that we all know what was said in the pre-sentence investigation. Earlier on, he did take responsibility. As his lawyer, I should have told him what I'm telling him now, which is you've got an appeal. You can't look at these folks and say you're sorry because there's an appeal. The law gives you one, so you got to do it. So I don't expect that to happen today. Likewise, I've got a group of folks here to tell you what a great kid my client is and why you should go one way or the other. And that's very effective strategy in a normal case where you didn't hear everything, where someone pled guilty and you know nothing about them, and you need to know who these people are. You know all that. We did all that. I can't imagine anybody would have a better view of this tragedy than you. And that's what it is. It's a complete tragedy. And there's nothing I can tell you don't know. But I would respectfully ask the court for indulgence, and I would remind the court of what the court already knows, and that's that when I stood up here in the trial and I said, give me a criminal rule 29, give me a directed verdict, throw this case out because of this, and this. You said, Mr. Sin, we're almost done. I'm not taking this away from the jury. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to interfere with the jury. You have your day in court, you have your trial, let the jury decide it. And if everything goes one way, deal with it. The other way, deal with it. We all agree to that, and we gave it to a jury. And we're here for a fourth-degree felony. We're not here for what could have been or what may be in the future. My client is responsible for a fourth-degree felony, and the law talks about fourth-degree felonies. In fact, What these folks don't know is that you don't just get to, judges don't just get to flip a coin. You're given guidelines and you're given sentencing factors, and you know them like the back of your hand. I know you do. But it's a 4th-degree felony. There's a presumption under the law that he get community control. There's a presumption for that. That's what the lawmakers in Columbus, who don't know anything about this family or anything about the Ethan that could have been, tell you do on a 4th-degree felony. And every day you deal with 4th-degree felonies. Every month you have dozens or hundreds, who knows? And you treat them a certain way. And in this case, no matter what the jury could have done, what they did was a 4th-degree felony, and you go through the sentencing factors. And I know one of the factors you're going to look at is this the most serious form of the offense? I get that. And frankly, it could be. I mean, Ethan, there's nothing more serious than a promising young man that's dead. There's nothing more serious than that. There's no way to make that right. There's no way
It's not that weird, but not normal.
Factor that into some legal equation. You can't factor in the hurt that these folks have. But the law does put niceties on it, and some of them are hard to hear. And one of the niceties is, or one of the parts of the equation are, when you decide whether this is the most serious form of the offense, I will give you nothing's more serious than the Ethan that could have been. But you do have to look at the factors, and one of the factors is, did the victim facilitate the commission of the offense? Did the victim have anything at all to say did he do anything? Is he minding his own business? Is this a situation where stranger on stranger? And no, these were kids and they were fighting. And we all know that because it was self-defense. We know that because the jury said it's self-defense to a large degree. That was the whole case. We all know that. We know what Deshawn did. We know the punch.
It's a critical sentencing factor.
We know what Ethan did. We know that it's a prank and that's it. He's a good kid. But to say that this is the same as me randomly running up and shooting somebody who's minding their own business is different. This was a horrible, tragic accident. And if you base your entire decision on the loss that this family has felt, you can't give enough time. You don't have enough time to give somebody to make up for that. So I don't envy your position. But if you do the math and you do what you said we have to do, which is not take it away from the jury, then you got a 4th-degree felony. And the 4th-degree felony has a presumption that he go home. He's been in jail, out of jail. Right now, I mean, his life's different than other folks' life. He's a high school graduate. He's a kid, but he's a man. He's got a fiance in the hospital today to be birthed today. She's 2 centimeters dilated right now, and he's sitting here chained to this table.
This is actually true.
Actions have consequences. I get that, but that is the reality. Can't give their kid back. Can't do it. The law doesn't factor in emotion. The 4th-degree felony. He's been living this for 2 years. We can't fix the tragedy that was, but we can maybe stop the tragedy that is. And I'm not asking for favors. I'm asking you to do what the jury suggested, follow what their intent was, and maybe ask yourself if, and again, I've never been a judge. I don't know how hard it is. I don't mean to disrespect, but maybe ask yourself, if I were one of those 12 jurors and I asked them what they wanted to have happen, if I said, what do you think is fair? I bet you everybody would say, enough's enough. Enough is enough is enough is enough. Respect our decision. But whatever happens, I do thank you. I can't walk away saying that we got railroaded. I don't like how it happened. I don't like the tragedy. Fate hands you a bad card sometimes. Maybe this is how to play out, but we got our day in court. I appreciate that. The jury heard what they heard. They decided what they decide. Now we're here to take responsibility. I'll tell you that you sit here wondering why you can't look at these folks and take responsibility. I'm telling you, I'm advising him to appeal because that's what you do. So you're going to have to read appeal rights, and it doesn't mean anything. But I would ask you to note in the PSI, he did own up to throwing that punch. I can guarantee you that if he could go back and erase that night, God, wouldn't we all? But I'm advising him not to say anything. I know you're going to be fired up him. He spent a lot of time in jail. I'm hoping they can put it behind them. I thank you for your courtesy today, and I thank you for considering my position.
Thank you, Mr. Sin.
That was pretty good. It's pretty good.
Mr. Deshawn Stafford, I've heard what Mr. Sin has said about you making a statement, but the law does require that I ask you directly if there is anything that you would like to say to me or to the court prior to my imposing a sentence this afternoon. Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Your Honor. Obviously, there are some differences between the brother. Tyler Stafford does not stand here accused of convicted of fourth-degree felonies, convicted of first-degree misdemeanor. The court knows that this is Tyler's first ever criminal conviction. I don't believe there's any juvenile adjudications as well. This is the first time he's been convicted of anything. Unlike his brother, Tyler is not a high school graduate. I've spent a lot of time with him over the last year and a half or so. It's kind of like I said before, he's a very soft-spoken, very soft-natured young man. Certainly not someone that was originally accused of, I don't know, aggravated murder, and then manslaughter. The charges kept going farther and farther down. Obviously, the jury knew it wasn't a murder, it wasn't a manslaughter. He's convicted of first-degree misdemeanor assault, which is still a crime. It's a misdemeanor, it's a misdemeanant, to use that term. But Tyler Stafford, I've spent a lot of time with him. I've had very good interactions with him throughout my entire representation, but he doesn't have a lot of structure. He needs to finish school. He needs to get out and work. We have a labor shortage in this country. We need him working and paying taxes. I believe that he has served on this case already, I think, 55, 56 days, somewhere in the middle of 50s, close to 2 months, let's just say. The maximum sentence is 180 days on this. I'm not sure what would be accomplished in returning him to jail. Certainly, a term of probation might be the appropriate sentence, might be doing the community a favor, and candidly, you might be doing
Community control is probation.
to keep an eye on him and to give him some structure and to make sure that he doesn't have any future, that this is his one and only criminal case in his life. That would be a major accomplishment. Obviously, the tragedy that happened, generally in a misdemeanor case, you don't have a young man who is deceased. It does happen occasionally. I mean, I know you've been a judge a long time. We've been practicing a long time. You see vehicular homicide cases that are misdemeanors. You see bar fights that turn into misdemeanor homicide, but it's unusual. Usually, if someone convicted of first-degree misdemeanor assault, it's a bar fight. It's some people in a restaurant arguing, something like that. And for someone to be convicted of a first-degree misdemeanor of their first ever offense, they're not going to do 2 months in jail. Not in this courthouse, probably
Yes, it
not
is,
in any
Mandy.
courthouse in the state of Ohio. Someone with no criminal history, first offense, and convicted of first-degree misdemeanor. And first-degree misdemeanor.
And he's right. Pretty much everywhere in Ohio, you're not going to jail on a first-time assault charge. But this is a little bit different. But he is telling the truth. No matter where he's at in Ohio, no matter where I've been in Ohio, and I've been in courthouses in all four. I've been in courthouses probably in like 25 counties. It's all the same.
That certainly everyone made mistakes that night on all sides. It wasn't a first-degree misdemeanor that he went out looking to accomplish, that he went out looking to cause trouble that night. But we all know the awful and tragic result. So if we were to have a sentence imposed in this case that would be very, very comparable to other misdemeanor assault convictions, both in this county and throughout Ohio, a 2-month sentence would be rather on the high end, I would say, someone convicted of first-degree misdemeanor. I'd ask the court to consider a very lengthy period of probation for Tyler, and perhaps putting a lot of conditions to keep a close eye on him, to make sure that he stays on the straight and narrow, and that this conviction doesn't send him down a path where this is his first of many cases. I want this to be his first and his only case ever. And I think that might happen if the court keeps a very close eye on him. I thank the court for its time.
Thank you, Mr. Gallick. Mr. Stafford, is there anything you would like to say prior to sentencing? Okay, anything further on behalf of the defense?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Oh, no. Okay. Never mind.
So both defense attorneys point out their guys aren't saying anything because they can't afford to say sorry because that affects it at appeal. Because if you say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it, well, you're admitting guilt and that ruins your appeal. So there's a reason why these guys aren't talking. They're protecting their appeal rights, which they should do. But you'll see the state act like the state. And here we go.
No one to speak on behalf of the defendants?
I've discussed it on behalf of my client. We have the right to speak. There are a lot of folks here to support, but again, we've all been here the whole time. We are just trying to do this to you. So thank you.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shuki.
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess I would first have members of the victim's family who wish to speak address the court.
Okay, very well. Mr. Lyman, hello. I know you've been here. We've seen each other a lot. We have never spoken. And so if you would please just state your name for the court reporter, and then I'm happy to hear from you.
My name is Bill Lyman.
Okay, go ahead.
People have asked how our family keeps going. To be honest with you, I have no idea. People have asked how we're feeling. Again, I don't even have the words to explain it. How am I supposed to feel? My son was brutally assaulted and was killed by the actions of 3 men because he made a bad choice to fool around with a child's water toy.
No, but I can work
The
on
jury
that.
somehow called that self-defense. And none of the 3 now are going to be held accountable. Deshawn, Tyler, this is how.
Well, there's some pictures we get to see. Yeah, they fucked them up. They fucked them up. And, it's funny. I will say I watched this yesterday because the curiosity got the better of me. You're going to hear a lot of, as somebody tried to say, let me see here. James, I actually will try to work on putting together I'll try to put together a summary of this. But where was it here? There was some of you guys were making jokes about, being, he didn't do nothing. Oh, there's some didn't do nothing that comes. Alone Alaskan, there is a lot of didn't do nothing. You're going to get your full of didn't do nothing in the next half hour. Didn't do nothing. Didn't do nothing. I promise you. So here we go. But yeah, Ethan got tuned up. He got tuned up worse than a guitar with a Willie Nelson band. Also, nice tattoos, Dad. Neck tattoos are a real winner.
Tyler, this is how you left my son in the middle of an Akron parking lot, allowed to die alone. Judge, this is a picture of self-defense this jury claims. Media, this is what it looks like when 3 adult men beat my teenage 17-year-old's minor son to death. This is what it looks like for them to claim self-defense.
Then they claimed self-defense. They claimed fuck around and find out.
It does not look like self-defense to me in the theory of the one punch. The night that you and your cousins attacked and took my son's life, Deshawn, you already had a warrant out for your arrest. It was issued on May 12, 2022, because you failed to follow through on a treatment program from a previous arrest. If you had followed through, perhaps you would have made different choices, but you didn't do that. Ever since June 2nd, 2022, I wake up every night between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock a.m. It's not because I want to. I wake up at that time period because that was the time period in which I found out that my son was killed by the police. The police let me know that my son had been killed.
Oh, yeah.
I can't sleep anymore.
By the police.
My question is, do you lie awake every single night reliving June 2nd? Because I do. I start each day thinking about what you and your cousin did to my son, Ethan, Every time I drive by the I Promise school, I am filled with absolute heartache and fear. If only I could have been there to help my child that night. If only I could have held my son in my arms one more time.
If you would have been there to help your child, did that include telling him, don't do this? I mean, or do you mean like you would have defended him and wouldn't have run away like his friends? I'm not sure what you mean there.
But you stole that opportunity away from me. I pulled into the parking lot to sit at the spot where my son was killed. I've sat in the dark bloodstain in that parking lot where my son's life drained away. Every moment of the day, I continue to rethink all of the choices you could have made that would have made a difference, not only for my child, but for you as well. After you and your cousin ran away from Ethan's friends, you could have chosen to call the police if you believed you were wrong. You didn't do that. You could have left the area if you believed you were in danger. You didn't do that either. You chose to go across the parking lot and engage Ethan, who at that point was still sitting in his car until you came over to the car. When Ethan was beaten unconscious, you made the choice to further attack him. You then attacked the one person who was trying to get help for Ethan as he lay on the pavement dying. Did you make any attempt to stop? Did you do anything to help a helpless person dying on the ground? You didn't. You chose to stand in the way of any help that Ethan could get by attacking the person who was making the 911 call and making that call come to an end. You attacked his friends, you destroyed cell phones, you moved the car, destroying a crime scene. For some reason, you weren't charged for any of those things, and I have no idea why. You then went and fled the scene. You had somebody take off your license plate from your car and hid your car. That's not the behavior of innocent people. And somehow this jury decided that's self-defense. The jury clearly lost its way, ignored evidence, and believed an uncorroborated, unsupported, self-serving statement that's not backed up by any evidence whatsoever. From what I've heard, this is called clearly jury nullification. My other son has been physically attacked on more than one occasion, with his attackers citing comments that came directly from newspaper articles, glorifying you and demonizing and disparaging my son Ethan. They told him they were going to stomp his head in like his brothers. My son is being gravely affected by this. We are not certain how life is going to turn out. People have sent our family emails and harassed us online because of the choices you have made. One of those stands out in my mind where the author was laughing because you and your cousin crushed my son's head like a watermelon. I've turned those emails into the police, but they say they can't do anything about it. It's just another example of what our lives have become since you made your choices that resulted in the death of my son on June 2nd. Our mental health has gone and we are devastated. Ethan had dreams of his senior year in high school playing sports. He was going to graduate with honors to go off to college at Ohio State. What the prosecutors failed to say about my child during the trial, they didn't humanize him, was that he spent weeks of his summers going with me to impoverished people across our nation. He would feed people who were hungry, he helped to fix their homes, he repaved their driveways. Since Ethan was a really little boy.
If he did all of that, what made him think, I want to go fuck with people who live in a bad area?
He stood out at Grace Park in Akron right by my side, clothing and feeding people who have absolutely nothing because he cared about people who are hungry. Your actions led to the death of that child. All of the good that Ethan accomplished in his life lies dead in the ground now because of the choices you two made. I lie down in the dirt of my son's grave just wishing I could be near him again. You've stolen away the life and the dreams I've had as a father. Very soon, your life just gets to move on. Ours never will. Our understanding of our world died on June 2nd. Our faith in the justice system died this fall. I will only live so much longer. I'm not going to live forever. But my other son has the rest of his life to deal with the fact that you were a part of killing his best friend and his brother that day. I will never know exactly what you did that night, but you better believe God does. God knows it all. But I do know you did nothing to help my son, and your actions and your choices resulted in my son being left for dead and alone in the middle of the parking lot at the I Promise school. This is where you left him. That's what he left. That's what it was. That's where you fled from. Our family has to somehow in every moment and every day deal with this nightmare. Again, very soon your life just gets to move on. As one father to another father, I heard you had a baby today, or you're having a baby today. I ask that you teach your child to be good and to love everyone the way that Ethan loved everyone. Ethan would stand out in the freezing weather at Grace Park in Akron to help clothe and feed homeless people who had nothing. That's what you killed. Ethan had that kind of compassion. You don't. You have a full life to share with your child.
Did Ethan also stand out in the cold with his airsoft gun and shoot at homeless people? Because sounds like sounds like basically what you're telling me is he was the nicest boy in the world, didn't do nothing wrong. Sounds like you're telling me that he did do nothing wrong. Oh Lordy, he's the nicest boy in the world, teaching them blind penguins how to read every Sunday. Just nice boy, didn't do nothing wrong. Such a nice boy. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. He was the nicest boy in Akron when he wasn't harassing people. So just a nice boy. Nice boy. And that's what it sounded like. Nice boy. He's such a nice boy. He didn't do nothing wrong. He just, he was just fooling about. When I let him bring his foosball gun when he shoot homeless people, it's just hilarious. Even the homeless people, they laughed because he was spreading joy by harassing them. Because the joy was the harassment was the joy. It's the foosball joy. I'm sure that's what he's going to say next, or if he could. I mean, he's saying all this with a straight face. That's the sad part. All the good he did. It's like, well, he did some bad too, buddy. And if you won't acknowledge the bad, then what is the good if you won't acknowledge it?
My time with my son was cut off after 17 years. That's not enough. The night Ethan was killed, you made a whole lot of bad choices. With your children, don't raise them to be like you. Raise your children with the good choice to love and to forgive the very same things you chose to deny my son Ethan. Nothing this court or anyone will do will bring back my child, my son, Ethan. My heart is filled with anger at the injustice our family has experienced and the narrative that somehow my son caused his own death, which is not true. My son never got out of the car to fight. It wasn't in his nature, but somehow he was painted as the aggressor, and he was not. So, Your Honor, considering the fact that this felony is considered a low-level felony, these are just misdemeanors, I would request that your sentence for both of these individuals to be the absolutely max allowed by law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyman.
I mean, I get you don't speak ill of the dead, but once again, he didn't do nothing wrong. Nice boy, didn't do nothing wrong. He would go kill cancer. When he was done terrorizing black folks, he was going to kill cancer. He was the nicest boy in the world. He didn't get out of the car to fight. He was coming over to play hopscotch. That's what he's going to do. He's going to be like, hey, you black kids need some coats. I know you look poor because you're black. I do this all the time. No, that's what he did instead of, and selling weed. But he was the nicest boy in the world. Every nice kid sell weed. Even Charlie Brown sell weed and pick on the black kids.
Good afternoon, ma'am. If you can state your name, please, for the court reporter.
It's Christy Lang. I'm Ethan's aunt and godmother. I ask your permission to address the defendants directly.
Yes, you may, ma'am. And for the record, I do have written statements from Ethan's aunt and Ethan's mom. I believe that you're going to present most of that here in court today. I also have a short letter that was written by Ethan's younger brother. So just for the record, I do have those in my file and I have reviewed those. Go ahead.
No remorse. You have shown no remorse for your actions in causing the death of our beloved Ethan. You show no remorse when the three of you beat Ethan, even as he lay dying on the pavement. You showed no mercy in the aftermath. instead turning your attention to terrorizing his friends and vandalizing his car, not seeking help when it was obvious that he wasn't getting up again. You know what you did. You said it yourself. I hit him and he went to sleep. You know what you did. And aren't you lucky now that some people actually believe it was the pavement that killed him and not the punch you threw? You showed no remorse in the immediate aftermath of his death. You could have called the police. You showed no remorse in the days, the hours, the week following his death until your arrest, removing the license plate from your car, parking it where it wouldn't be noticed, when instead you could have turned yourself in. Your attorney made much of the early hours of your arrest, but you could have prevented that had you only had some remorse.
How would remorse
As your
keep the charges?
sentencing is considered, I want you both to know something about the 17-year-old whose life was taken way too early due to your actions. Ethan was a force of love and kindness. The oldest grandchild in our family, he was more like a big brother to all of his cousins. He looked after them. He played with them, even when he had friends over in his teen years.
Did he sell his cousins weed? Just curious.
He had a radiant smile, an infectious energy. He couldn't see the bad in anyone, and he tried to be a friend to everyone he met.
Except the Stafford brothers.
Once he got in an argument with a friend over what sort of people would go to hell. And Ethan's response was, if God loves everyone, then so should I. And that is how he lived his life.
And then I'm sure the whole bus clapped and he was working on his MIT thesis to cure cancer. This is literally the reverse of he didn't do nothing wrong. Then the next day when he was out with Dr. King marching in Selma, he took that dog bite on his arm, all in the name of fighting racism. I'm sure that's just as believable of a story.
He couldn't tell a lie. He couldn't bear it if his actions or words hurt someone, and he would try to make it right. In fact, if you had given him a chance, I have no doubt in my mind that he would try and make it right with you. But you didn't let him. I counted 10 seconds it took for you to get to his car from the time his friends started running back to it. You know what that means to me? That means that you all immediately made that decision to go look for a fight. You didn't give him a chance. You were the one looking for trouble that night. And in 10 seconds, you caused it. You could have made 1,000 other choices, but you wanted a fight. And I can't help but think, what would have happened if you took those court-mandated classes that you were supposed to, not once, but twice? Maybe you would have learned how to calm down in 10 seconds. But no, you ran to Ethan and you threw the first punch. What would have happened had you been picked up on that warrant that was issued May 12th? You might not have been at that basketball court. You have a history of violence. This is what you do. And you have no remorse for your actions, and you've proved that over and over again, each time you violated parole for your past crimes and for this one. So let me tell you what life has been like for my family, starting with the early morning of June 3rd, 2022. My children, who were 11 and 8 at the time, were supposed to have their last day of school. Instead, our daughter woke up and found us sitting in shocked silence on the couch, but she looked at us and she knew something was wrong.
She knew that wasn't
She
true.
stopped on the stairs, and before we could say anything, the first words she blurted out in a panic were, "Did somebody die?"
Then the whole bus clapped again.
Trying to comfort my children when I was lost in my own grief is something I will never forget. It took about a week for my kids to gain the courage to ask me, "Do we know yet how Ethan died?"
I'm sure that's not how
As
that
I
happened.
struggled to find the words to explain to them his death in the simplest way I could without lying them, because I will not lie to my children about how you killed Ethan. I was struck.
So what did you tell them? He was just minding his own business, going out selling weed on the north side of Akron, start terrorizing some black folk? Or did you leave all that part out? Or you say, well, you know, when your cousin does that, that's his way of showing God's love. He sells weed because that's what Jesus would do.
By the horror on their faces. And they replied, "Why would someone do that?" I have no words to explain my actions. On June 6, 2022, Ethan was supposed to have his first college visit. Instead, we were planning his funeral, picking out his gravesite. I want you to know and remember these words from the undertaker. "There was a lot of bruising. You may want to consider long sleeves." I was brought back to that moment as I had to sit in this courtroom and watch you kill Ethan. And when I listened to the medical examiner say there's no cuts on his right hand, when Ethan was right-handed, was he even able to defend himself when it was 3 against 1? Ethan's death is like a glass shattering. Our grief and sadness are so obvious, like big pieces of broken glass, and we know how to cradle those sharp pieces carefully because they cut us and it hurts. But some moments hit us unexpectedly, like the sting of being cut by a tiny shard of glass we didn't see, and we never know when it will stumble upon these slivers that cut us to the core. One sliver that cut me is when my son confessed he was scared to go to school because Ethan was killed at a school, and he asked, "What if what happens to Ethan happens to me?"
Did you tell your son, as long as you don't go harassing people, this literally cannot happen? I mean, this is like saying, I don't want to get killed by spiders in Australia. Well, you don't have to go to Australia. But they might get me at school. They can't. You literally have to cause this to happen. I mean, God forbid I get killed. I don't want my family, my mom, I don't want my sister. I don't want future Mrs. Martin 2.0 coming in there and saying, "I just nice boy, I didn't do nothing wrong." If I did something wrong, fine. But don't make me out the second coming of Jesus.
You have shattered our family. We were once so close, sharing weekly family meals, celebrating every birthday, holiday, and now we can barely get together because the loss of Ethan hurts so much, and we have no words to comfort each other. We feel lost because he is absent, and he will never join us again. All last summer, my 9-year-old niece said, "I miss Ethan. He was my best friend." We suffered even deeper cuts and continue to do so when we have to endure the public discourse that surrounds Ethan's death from a media and people that are determined to victim blame and victim shame Ethan, printing many falsehoods about him and his character when none of these people knew him or knew us. And because our grief was and continues to be private and not for public consumption, When you can't get a story from us, they willingly printed lies sprouted from your attorneys' mouths, or worse yet, speculated themselves and wrote fictions that should have been labeled based on a true story. We found ourselves helpless and wanting to defend Ethan, a person who didn't need defending in life. We were accused of falsifying his hopes, his dreams, his kindnesses, when the story should have been focused on you. When the story should have asked, where's Ethan's phone? Where are his car keys? Where's the money that was in his wallet? Why'd you keep the splat? Was it a trophy?
Yeah, where did the phone go? I have a feeling your side of the aisle knows where that phone went. And I have a feeling somebody in your side of the aisle took that phone and wiped it away because we can't find it. So I'm sure that has some very unflattering videos on it. I'm sure.
Why did you cause $3,000 in damages to his car? Why did you stop his friends from helping him? Why did you beat him until he died? There is no closure for us. There's no sense of justice. There's no sentence long enough that will bring back the light that you extinguished. We have a hole in our hearts that will never be filled. So I have my own sentence for you. When you look in the face of your child who smiles back at you with unconditional love as Ethan did, you see the face of Ethan David Liming. When someone smiles and says hello or holds a door for you as Ethan used to do, you see the face of Ethan David Liming.
When someone sells you that icky, dank-ass weed, I hope you see the face of Ethan David Liming. When some white guy comes and harasses you simply because you're minding your own business, I hope you see the face of Ethan Liming.
When someone hugs you and tells you they love you as Ethan did, you see the face of Ethan David Liming. When someone moves into your community who's been orphaned, you take them under your wing and you treat them as a brother, as Ethan did. You see the face of Ethan David Liming. When a friend needs a place to stay and you welcome them into your home, as Ethan did, you see the face of Ethan David Liming. And if you have the grace to live a long life and you have a grandchild that stops by and says hello just because he was in the neighborhood, as Ethan did, may you see the face of Ethan David Liming. May every act of love and kindness extended to you for the rest of your life remind you of Ethan David Liming. And may you always remember that you are responsible for his death. When you look at your hands, may you remember that these are the hands that killed Ethan David Liming. And when you wash your hands, I hope you remember washing Ethan's blood off of them and you see his face. When you hold your child in your hands, may you remember that these are the hands that killed Ethan David Liming. And when your child wants to hold your hand, remember, these hands killed Ethan David Liming. Ethan did not deserve the death you gave him. You robbed him of his future, a future where he dreamed of helping people. But we really don't know if that would be his future, do we? Because his future now lies 6 feet under a tombstone.
Wait, are you kind of admitting his future wasn't certain? I thought you said he was like the nice boy and he was going to be like Jesus 2.0. But you're now saying we weren't sure he was going to be able to do all that? Also, guys, if you're wondering, this woman here, she keeps showing up. She is what's called a victim's advocate. She works in the prosecutor's office. This is a very common thing. They escort the people up to speak, and she's there to be there with them. It's a very... If you watch any other trial, you'll see somebody like this.
You robbed us of loving our son, brother, grandson, nephew, cousin, and friend for what should have been a long life. We will never forget Ethan, and we will not allow his life and memory to be defined by his death. Every time you look at your hands, I know you will never forget him either. May he haunt your thoughts, and may you see his face every day of your life.
I mean, just saying, if Ethan really was this like pious man of God, he wouldn't want you to curse people like that. He'd be like, and this is his auntie. He'd be like, Aunt, you're like, that's not what I stand for. I wouldn't want to haunt these guys. So I don't know, conflicting messages. But the idea that she was allowed to address the defendants like that and talk some shit about the attorneys, the judge should have gotten in the way of that. And then next up is Ethan's mom.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you could state your name, please.
I'm Jennifer Lyman, I'm Ethan's mother. First statement I have is from Ethan's brother. He wanted to address the court. Ethan is my big brother, and he is the biggest influence on my life and my best friend. And I look up to him, and he was the best brother. We did everything together. And ever since what happened, nothing's ever been the same, and I don't think it ever will. I asked the judge in the court.
So would my
"Please
aunt."
Give a maximum sentence. My son could have made better choices that night, but nothing he chose should have resulted in his death. The defendants had choices they could have made too. The choices they made resulted in beating and killing my son. That night, they didn't just kill my son, but a part of me died too. A part of my younger son died too. Since the night the police knocked on my door to tell me Ethan was gone, I have been living in a nightmare, praying and hoping I will wake up from it and he will be here. I go to bed every night wondering if Ethan was scared and if he felt alone as he died in that parking lot. And now I have the pictures in my head to go with it. When I finally can get a few hours of sleep, I wake up realizing this is not a nightmare. This is my reality, and he is gone. I am reminded that I will never see his smile or hear his laugh. I will never hear him call me mom, and I will never understand this. This is soul-crushing. No one can ever understand this unless they have lived through it. I will never see my son again. Ethan was a good boy. Ethan wasn't a bully. He brought kids home who needed a place to stay. He was always bringing kids over to eat with our family. He was the first to make friends with the new kids who joined the football team. And the way my son was described
Yeah, he introduced himself as, I'm the weed guy.
in this trial does not define who he was. I will never get to see Ethan again, see what he would look like as a grown man, or see what career he would have chosen. And I will never get to see or hold his children. Since that night, my younger son sleeps in the basement. He doesn't want to sleep in the room where he heard the police downstairs and came out from hearing their voices to ask what was going on. You can't imagine what it feels like to have to tell your son that his brother and his best friend is dead and gone. The look of horror and shock on his face is imprinted on my mind forever. You took my youngest son's innocence. He was a loving and happy boy. Now he is angry and sad and full of pain. He spends most of his time in the basement because that is where he and Ethan would hang out.
He told me he feels so alone that when he grows up and his dad and I are gone, he will have no one to share memories with, to celebrate birthdays with, or holidays with. If he has kids, they won't have an uncle or cousins, and he won't get to be an uncle. Ethan was his big brother and best friend and mentor. Ethan was the person he would go to for help in school, to give him advice about girls, life, sports, and everything. As a mother, I want to fix this and make it better, and I can't. My faith isn't what it used to be. I'm hanging on to it and rebuilding it because it's the only hope I have of ever being with Ethan again. I can't fathom never seeing him again. I wish the defendants would have treated my son the way they would have wanted their child treated if their child made the same choices Ethan made. Would they feel their child deserved being beaten and killed? I ask for the maximum sentence so they have that time to think about what they did, how they could handle themselves better in society. The defendant repeatedly went against the court's instructions when on home arrest. I feel giving him the maximum sentence will show him that he has to abide by the laws and not take matters into his own hands. If he would have called the police that night, like he claimed he wanted to, my son would still be standing here with me. So I beg the court to please give justice to my son, Ethan David Lyman.
Thank you very much. Ms. Shipman.
Your Honor, the state, on behalf of the family, on behalf of the community, asks for the maximum sentence for these defendants and their actions. I'm not sure if Mr. Hudson just misspoke. There is no presumption of community control on the felony, the aggravated assault, under 29, 13. In regard to Mr. Deshawn Stafford, he has repeatedly shown this court that this court's conditions of his bond, I guess the rules, the laws, court orders don't apply to him. He was repeatedly failing to follow the conditions of his bond. The pendency of this case, this is the 6th violation of his bond that we received throughout this case, and we were able to give him many chances on that, and he failed to apply and failed to respond to pretrial supervision in court as he was supposed to. He gave it time and time again to report, but he showed that he was not going to follow court orders. I think somebody who shows you that, is not going to be able to comply with just the conditions of his bond, just showing up to pretrial release, is not going to be able to comply with the conditions, the rigors of probation. So I want to bring that, and I know that you know that, Judge, but I want to put that on the record and bring that to your attention. Ultimately, I will just add that this is the worst form of the offense. You have the discretion to give whatever sentence you feel is appropriate. An aggravated assault resulting in someone's death is the worst form of the offense. And based on that, based on the statements of the family, based on Mr. Deshawn Stafford's inability to follow the law and the rules of the court orders, we ask for that. And I think justice in this case for this family, there'll never be justice for them. But at least giving the maximum penalty, the maximum sentence will show the defendants, maybe give a tiny bit of solace, but I doubt it, but at least something to show that their loss is for nothing, is not for nothing. That Ethan deserves that justice. So that's what we ask.
See, and I hate that right there because they're basically saying, look, we couldn't bring home the dub, but hey, can you backfill for us, Judge? Like we leaned out over our skis and couldn't bring it home. But you can at least stick it to these guys for a maximum sentence so we don't look as bad.
Thank you, Ms. Shuki. So this case has been particularly difficult for everyone. It's been difficult factually, legally, and certainly emotionally. And to that point, I first want to express my deepest sympathy to the Lyman family. Our entire community is heartbroken and sorry for your loss. I have sons. I have sons who were high school athletes and college athletes, and I cannot imagine your pain. If there was any way to change those 75 seconds last summer, I don't know a single individual that would not do so. It only took 75 seconds to change both of these families forever. And in those 75 seconds, I can count at least a half a dozen and probably more decisions of everyone involved that had they chosen a different course of action, Ethan's death might have been avoided. This really was, unfortunately, a perfect storm of poor decisions by all of these young men. I'm going to start with defendant B, Mr. Tyler Stafford. Mr. Stafford has been found guilty of a single count of misdemeanor assault. I'm first going to note that defendant C, Mr. Donovan Jones, was also charged and previously found guilty of misdemeanor assault. However, he was charged only in only in relation to his interactions with Mr. Stefanko and Mr. Shady. Mr. Jones was not charged in relation to Ethan Lyman, or maybe more specifically and accurately, he was charged, but then was not indicted after the grand jury with any actions in relation to Mr. Lyman. I point that out only to distinguish the sentence that I'm going to impose on Mr. Stafford with the sentence that I imposed on Mr. Jones. As to both of the defendants, the court has considered the plea negotiation, has considered the PSIs, the statements of counsel, the statements of the victim's family, as well as the entire record in this case. Based upon the facts and circumstances of the case and consideration of the relevant sentencing factors, I am to apply the minimum sanction that the court has determined will protect the public, promote the rehabilitation of, and punish the offenders without imposing an unnecessary burden on state or local resources. So as to Tyler Stafford, on count 1 of the indictment, the court will impose a sentence of 6 months incarceration for the crime of assault, a misdemeanor of the first degree. I will note that the
Technically, that's not a
jail
legal sentence.
is overcrowded, and misdemeanants are not generally held at the jail. Mr. Stafford will likely be moved to the CASC facility or to a jail in a neighboring county. I will allow him to serve his sentence at CASC because at CASC he can receive some programming, receive some cognitive classes, etc. That goes to Mr. Gallup's point that Mr. Stafford sitting in the jail for 4 months may not assist anyone. Mr. Stafford can still serve his time at CASC and receive some programming there. As to defendant A, Mr. Deshawn Stafford, as I stated, Mr. Stafford has been found guilty of 1 count of aggravated assault, a felony of the 4th degree, and 1 count of misdemeanor assault. A few things about the law related to sentencing on these counts. First, pursuant to statute, whenever a defendant is found guilty of both a misdemeanor and a felony, any period of incarceration imposed for those offenses must be served concurrently or at the same time. Second, pursuant to statute, while there may not be a presumption of probation, certainly I agree with Mr. Sin that many fourth-degree felonies do result in probation. For most felonies of the fourth degree, indeed, Ohio law, under the TCAP statutes, requires those sentences to be served in the local jail and not in the state prison system. However, where the offense is an offense of violence, as is the crime of aggravated assault, and where the seriousness of the offenses is considered and other factors are present, a prison term may be imposed. In this case, the maximum prison term that the court could impose is 18 months incarceration. I have considered all of the relevant factors. I do believe that this case is among the most serious forms of the offense of aggravated assault. The victim suffered serious physical harm, and the sentence will be proportional to the harm caused. The defendant also has a misdemeanor crime of violence and a felony offense as a juvenile. And he did have violations of pretrial supervision and GPS monitoring, which may indicate a likelihood that community service or community control would not be successful.
Okay, I need to stop right here and bring something up. Notice she brought up all the times he violated bond. Being out on bond is a job audition for probation, because right now, 6 times he failed to abide by the conditions of bond. That tells somebody you don't give a fuck about the rules. And if you're trying to say to the judge, please let me out on probation, I'll follow the rules. You literally just showed her you can't follow the rules and you don't care for him. That is very critical. That's why you follow the conditions of bond. You're showing the judge, look, I can play your game. And he kind of screwed himself here for stupid reasons. Like we talked about, he wasn't charging his monitor, he was disappearing. And now he's in shackles while his kid's being born. You know, these are some self-inflicted problems.
On count 2 of the indictment, the court would impose a sentence of 18 months incarceration for the crime of aggravated assault, a felony of the 4th degree. On count 4, the court would also impose 6 months of jail sentence for the crime of assault, a misdemeanor of the 1st degree. Again, pursuant to Ohio law, those would be served concurrently for a total of 18 months incarceration. Mr. Stafford, you may also be subject to up to a 2-year period of post-release control following your release from prison. If you violate the conditions of that supervision,
Post-release control is
or
parole.
may impose a prison term as part of your sentence of up to 1/2 of your stated prison term. I'm not going to impose any fines. I will order that the defendants pay court costs. You will be given the opportunity to pay those costs on a payment schedule, and if you're not able to do so on a timely basis, you could be ordered to do community service in order to satisfy that cost judgment. I do have 56 days credit for defendant B, Mr. Tyler Stafford. I have 137 days credit for time already served for Deshawn Stafford, defendant A. And I will inform both defendants that you understand that you do have a right to an appeal in this matter within 30 days of the filing of the court's sentencing entry. If you're unable to pay for the costs of the transcript, the record, and all relevant documents required for the appeal, they will be provided to you without cost. And if you are unable to pay for an appeal, you are entitled to have the notice of appeal filed without payment of a filing fee. Also understand that you are unable to afford counsel for an appeal. Counsel will be appointed for you without cost. Do you understand that, Mr. Deshawn Stafford? And Mr. Tyler Stafford? All right, very good. Mr. Sin, I know you've discussed an appeal with your client. Is it his request that counsel be appointed for that purpose?
I'd like to have him talk about it with somebody, so yes, you should have the opportunity.
All right, I will,
I don't want to be the other way.
understood. Makes, generally, trial counsel is not counsel for an appeal. Give everything a second look. I will get counsel appointed for Mr. Stafford. Anything further from counsel?
I will, Jim.
Your Honor, Tyler Stafford, we haven't decided if he wants to appeal. He wants to think.
Okay, very well. You will let me know if an appeal is forthcoming. Ms. Shuki?
Here comes the money shot.
Judge, there is a matter of the felony 1 involuntary manslaughter count that the jury was hung on in regard to Mr. Deshawn Stafford. After reviewing that hung jury, after speaking with those jurors, after reviewing the case, the evidence, the trial, the witnesses' statements, and witnesses' testimony, we had numerous meetings at our office about that. And based on all of that, we are electing not to pursue a retrial on the felony 1 involuntary manslaughter.
Boom.
We have notified the family that yesterday.
Okay. Then as to count 1, for defendant A, that count will be dismissed without prejudice. I believe.
May speak, just want to make sure you understand that that's against the family wishes.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez, who is counsel on behalf of the Lyman family. Okay, at this time,
One additional thing, Your Honor. I know my client didn't do great on house arrest, but he is having a baby today. So I'm going to make the effort to ask if you give him a report date, let him be out for the rest of his child.
State objection. Let this be over today.
I agree. At this time, I think Mr. Stafford should be remanded to custody and continue to serve a sentence.
Yeah.
Thank you. Court is in recess.
This is once again why you don't screw around on bod, because then you get burned. Okay, so what happened there? Why did I say that sentence is not legal in Ohio? Technically in Ohio, a misdemeanor sentence is a maximum of 180 days in jail. There's case law on this because somebody actually appealed to the Court of Appeals and said, well, actually 6 months does not equal 180 days. And the Court of Appeals, and actually it ended up going to the Supreme Court, was like, you're right, it's not. 180 days does not equal 6 months because 6 months could be more or less than 180 days. So, and actually, yeah. So he got maxed out at 180 days. Little brother did. Big brother got maxed out at 18 months. Now, you heard her talking about the TCAP issue. TCAP is a program where the state of Ohio, through the Department of Corrections, pays counties to house low-level felony offenders locally. It keeps them off the books in the state system, and it's cheaper. And it's kind of like been a Faustian bargain for counties to do this because it ends up boning them in the long run. But hey, it's money from the state. You gobble it up. And Akron's one of those counties. Basically, it's all the major counties have joined this program. That said, though, he is an offender of violence, so she can override that and send him. Now, here's the issue. He has an 18-month sentence. He has jail time credit for 134 days. So that's just over 4 months. And where he's at, he will get transported to jail lickety-split. If he's not already there today, he'll probably be there by Monday or Tuesday. So instead of 18 months, he's got 14 months now. He's a very short time person. The Department of Corrections, he could very likely get released sooner than 18 months. He might be there 6 months and they cut him loose. And what they would do is probably put him on post-release control, which is considered parole. for more or less all intents and purposes. They would put him on post-release control, PRC, and probably put him in a halfway house for like 90 days and get him out. When you have short time and low sentences, they look for ways to get rid of you, and they probably will in this case. So, Nycox VO is saying, "Is this a news channel or what?" No, I am an attorney in Cleveland, Ohio, and just covering the trial that occurred. This was a kind of a big deal when it happened, and then nobody really heard about the trial, and then all of a sudden there was a verdict and people lost their minds. So, no, but I try to cover topics that go on, that are legal related, and this is one of them. And the sentencing is pretty important. But thank you for asking. Now, I hope that answers the questions for you guys. So the other one has 50 some odd days, and he's being sent to Cask, and Cask is a community alternative. What are they? How is it pronounced again? Cask is the community alternative sentencing center. It's kind of like a halfway house / workhouse. In Summit County, they send a lot of people to get OVIs, DUIs there. So he's going to be there, and that's because the jail is overcrowded, or he's going to get sent to another county's jail for the time being, and then probably finish out his time at Cask. So I hope that explains what's going on there. Now, there are some things that are going to happen to them. These convictions are not expungible or sealable under Ohio law, as they are offenses of violence. So they're both SOL, number one. Number two, the prosecutors will fight tooth and nail, and the victims will fight tooth and nail for this ever happening. So they have 30 days from the entry being filed in the clerk of courts to appeal. And it's 30 calendar days from yesterday. So, and that, Nico says, "I'm not from the States, but my girlfriend is actually from Columbus." Cool. Yeah, this is about an hour and a half away from Columbus. Now, somebody here was asking some questions, and I want to bring up. Pope Brackett sent me saying, "How is 6 months a legal sentence? Under a year, don't they go by days?" Yes, they do. In Ohio, they do, but some places don't. And seriously, the first offender, that sentence is BS. Sure, but yes, his actions and the whole thing was a little bit escalated. So it's here's the thing. You may not agree with it, and there's no appealable issue here. The judge sentenced someone within the allowed sentencing range. That's it. Even if it's a maximum sentence, the court can say, you have an automatic right to appeal, and the court can look at it, but they'll say yes. They'll look at it. She made sentencing factors. The court may disagree, but it doesn't appear to be any improper sentencing factors and findings. So 0 to 180 days. She gave 180 days. Boom, done. Valid. For the brother, 18 months. 6 to 18 months is the sentencing range. Boom, valid. Those are going to get upheld. Now, I think there might be arguments saying manifest weight and sufficiency of the evidence. Sure. But just saying, oh, she nuked their boots off. At the end of the day, not really. And yeah. So, Jeffrey McKinnery says, "I did 45 fucking days in jail for a perjury about shooting a toy cap." Well, yeah. Sorry to hear that, man. And then SG Blue says, "Selling weed, bullying with a water gun, and being a dick are not capital offenses." They're not. But if someone punches you, you run the risk of falling and cracking your skull open and bleeding to death. If you don't want that to happen, then don't go bully people with a water gun and be a dick. That's the thing. Because if you do all that, I think you'd agree being punched is a fair trade-off. Okay, well, if you happen to get punched and your skull's made out of paper mache and you didn't know that, well, oopsie poopsie. Or you get punched and knocked out and you fall and hit the ground. Well, those are not capital offenses. It's just this is chalked up to shit happens. Blade 2.0 saying, "When does the timer start for their sentences?" Starts effective today. Their sentences are being enforced forthwith. And yes, they get every day they spent on this because they weren't facing other charges. It's all jail time credit for them. So, but anyways, we're gonna catch up some super chats real quick. Fair Frozen 55 for $5. Thank you, man. Saying working long and late again. Only rest the wicked get is when they are gone. Life goes on one way. It gets more complicated. Awaiting the Palmer 80 show. Yes. Tomorrow night on Rumble, we will be doing the spooky ghost gun Halloween carving session. Basically, you're going to watch me act like a monkey with a Dremel, but it should be fun. I'm not sure the time yet, probably like 8 or 9 o'clock. Unhung Hero for $2 says, I'm going to come. Don't come. Torgo the White is a new member. Thank you, Torgo. I appreciate your support. D for $5. Thank you, D. Is saying, I'll be honest, if I was in the same position as the dudes on trial, the other guy would find a whiskey bottle in his tailpipe. Yeah. Let's see here. And then Mandy for $10. Thank you so much, Mandy. Saying, I'm just a poor boy. I need no sympathy because I'm easy come, easy go, little high, little low. Yes. Any way that weed goes, I'm just gonna sell it. Is basically how the family reacted to that. And Mandy again for $2. Thank you, Mandy. Mama. Ooh. So that is thank you guys for the super chat so far. I appreciate the support there. Let's see. Chaucerian Fraud says, what bothered me the most is that he did not instigate it, his friends did. To be fair, he gave his airsoft gun to his friend and said, go do it. And he likely filmed it. Because remember, his phone disappeared. And they couldn't find it. So Ethan was likely in charge of all of this. Jim says it looked a lot more than one punch. Yes, but there's no way to determine the first punch is likely the fatal and mortal wound. So the rest of it, he probably was already dead. Torgo says, did he only get hit once? No, but the first hits that caused him to fall and strike his head on the ground killed him. The rest of it was just overkill. They were beating a dead horse. Snoodle Stark says, I don't get the piling on the family. Ethan shouldn't have done what he did, but I can't imagine if that was my kid. I think the parents in the family probably did see the best version of him, and that's fine. But to get up there and they sound like every person in the hood when somebody gets killed on the first 48. Oh, he was an aspiring rapper. He was working on computers. He was going to cure cancer. It's like, and everybody's here sitting saying, no, dude was selling weed, and they decided to go harass random black people. It's like, I get it. He was a nice kid to you, but did the aunt know he was like the weed man? Do you know he did all this stuff? I get it. You don't want to acknowledge it, but to go up there, it's one thing to mourn the loss, but to lie about the reality of what somebody was. I think that's far more tragic and disturbing. So, Scam likely says Freddie Mercury gained a lot of weight. Well, hey, he beat HIV. He got the weight back. Amateur Iconoclast for $2 says thank you. Well, thank you. Sean Bird says, how is it they can track phones unless you lose them, then all of a sudden it can't be found / tracked? Yeah. Stabby says, you open your thingy yet? I haven't even had a chance to get to the post office yet. I'll probably save it for tomorrow and open it on stream. Unless it's going to die, then I'll make sure it's open today. Chestnut Fried saying weed is illegal in Ohio, right? It's legal here in Colorado, so we don't have as many small-time weed dealers like we used to. Yeah, it's not legal for personal, recreational use yet. Jeff McKinney saying, but how bad is being a weed man shooting toy guns? It's not. But if you're shooting me in the face with a toy that can blind me and you won't stop, and I punch you in the face a couple of times and you happen to fall down and die, is that really manslaughter? Or is that kind of like, you bought a ticket and sorry? That's kind of where we are with this. Twisted Puppet says, so I'm confused. Did the dad delete the kids' iCloud backups? I don't know. Somebody did. Someone deleted all this information. Cops didn't bother looking because they didn't want to look. But someone did. Someone went ahead and did all that because, like I said, it's easier to preserve the memory of the person you knew than to realize it's dashed and you were completely wrong. Claude says, can you cover a trial that isn't so depressing? Well, I mean, most of these aren't going to be fun. I mean, it's, especially on the criminal side, most of it's pretty bad. So, Jim said that's not what happened, though. They chased them down and stomped him while he was on the ground. Yes, I'm not denying they did any of that. My argument is that those were not fatal blows. He was already dead. So, they're desecrating a corpse at that point. Yeah, they kicked him. They did a lot of stuff, but he was already dead, it appears. So, oh no, they beat up a dead body. Jeff is saying, didn't watch the whole thing, just got here. No, it's okay. It's all good. It's all good. I was just kind of stating it aloud. Wasn't trying to fight you. Appreciate you asking the question. But yeah, that is it for this. The prosecutors have dismissed it. They dismissed it without prejudice, meaning theoretically they could try it again. If I was the defense attorneys, I would have asked for a, with prejudice finding, but the court wouldn't probably grant that. But I'd do it just to protect the record. And yeah, that's it. Scott X, how can they say for sure he's instantly dead? There was some conjecture in there. Because the medical examiner pointing out like the damage to his brainstem would have been catastrophic. So that's how they got around that issue. The medical examiner was witness was very good for the defense. Wrestler Town says, I don't think we have the science to determine the fall cracked the skull that's stomping on that very same skull cracked the skull. I understand that, but hey, the medical examiner is the state's expert, and the state's expert gave his opinion. Jim says if he came up with a story that he was dead when they were stomping him, if he was dead, then he shouldn't have been bleeding. Well, how do you know when that, what caused that blood to come out? And I mean, somebody can still, if you start kicking a body, the blood's going to gush out. I mean, it doesn't just stay in there. Chaucer and Fraud says, I assume a fall fracture is different from a stomp fracture. Yeah, but they weren't able to determine that, so they couldn't argue it. Scott X says, from the concrete drop alone, damn, this fool done the Wilhelm scream. If you actually, nowadays in first aid, they teach you, and this is a very common thing. If you fall from a standing height, you're going to get treated for possible spinal injuries, cervical spinal injuries. Because when you fall from a standing height, that can fuck you up. That can screw up your, spine, your spinal cord, everything. So they will treat you for that. That is a very common thing now because it does happen frequently. Jim says, I reiterate that the prosecutor sucked. Yeah, they weren't the best, but I mean, it wasn't their fault. Ultimately, it was just a crappy case. I don't know how much better, the best prosecutors in that office could have done. Hey, Winter Soldier says, is it better to be dead or Terry Schiavo? I don't know, but, well, Terry Schiavo's dead right now, so it's, you're not really, is it better to be dead or dead Terry? Spike Meadow says, I wonder how long till the defendants are back with another case. Won't be long, I imagine. I mean, one of them had a case, and the other one looks like he had some juvenile stuff, but that's kind of a shit thing to say because these guys were minding their own business before. They weren't out causing problems. They were playing basketball. And had these guys left them alone, they would have never committed a crime that night. Josh Arian says, yeah, it's the way a lot of people die in fist fights. It's not the fist that kills you, it's your head slamming into the ground. Crazy someone can die over such quickly over such dumb nonsense. Dumbest thing in the world could get somebody killed like that. All it takes is just that long to have something happen. Twisted Puppet. Well, these weren't just white kids. There were some black kids in their car too, but they were all from a better area than where they were. Well, Sleazy says keywords that night. Well, I don't know what they do every other night, but there was nothing to indicate these guys were going to be bad. So the GM says, so not Akron? Yeah, I wouldn't go to Akron. Spike is saying it's a shit thing to say, like making fun of a grieving family. They're going to come out there and act like it was all, he was the second coming of Jesus. Like, I'm going to make fun of you for it. James says, I got one little fight and my mom got scared. Yeah, pretty much. Yes. It's like the Benford. It's like rocking the suburbs, just like Quiet Riot did. Anything Goes says, this has been riveting. Is there another trial that I'll cover next? I'm not sure what's next. I got to get that sorted out. But yes, we'll be doing more coming up. And then Lone Alaskan says, I have other reasons to hate Ohio. Oh. And then Graham is saying, Graham, it's good to see you, man. It's saying, glad I don't live in that city. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, it's Akron. There are far worse cities to live in Ohio. Akron's better than Canton. And I'd say Akron is better than Columbus. Columbus is horrible. Columbus is full of Ohio State people. It makes it insufferable down there. Ohio's paused. What can I say, man? Your mom had an impact on all of us. She left it here. I'm pretty sure Ohio's the least liked state in the country. That's great. Don't come here. We're full. We don't like you. Go away. Notice people from California don't come to Ohio and screw it up. Just saying. Like. James is saying, on the reverse of that previous comment, would you be bitching at Sean if the colors of the victim assailant were reversed? I think it's a fair question to ask. And the GM says, yeah, the Ohio flag. I know. Most dangerous flag in the country. Did I create the Ohio Valley? No, I did not. Crackern, yes. Charlie's saying, well, these guys have this on the records forever. Yes. Although with a misdemeanor assault, oh, come on. He's going to be able to find jobs going forward. That won't be too bad. And this guy with a felony assault, he'll still get decent work in life. So, it'll be all right. They'll be all right. Michelle, I would agree with this statement here. This is a very fair statement. The whole thing makes you angry because one kid's dead and two kids are serving time. So pointless. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that. This would be a very frustrating situation. Bella says I'm late. What was the sentence? Well, the younger brother, Tyler, got 180 days in jail. The older brother got 18 months in prison. So they got the max. The judge let him get the high score. Mandy says, a non-parent, I just see humanity being humanity. Yeah. Oh, Graham is saying this country is slowly turning in South Africa. Kind of, but we're not. Yeah, we're not having people stripping out copper yet, but yeah, that'll be happening soon. Oh, and no one's going to be helped at the end of the day. Well, I'm betting nobody really got closure out of this at the end of the day. So. Oh, I like this, Stabby. Yes, on Discord. I hate you and doesn't want you to know when I'm streaming. Well, I already said when I'm streaming, so. So, let's see here. Camp Hathick saying a middle school closed down in my area, and a month later, all the copper wiring was completely stripped. We're just not doing it in live buildings yet. Hey, don't knock urban copper reclamation until you've tried it. Urban copper mining is a very, very good way to make a living. Charlie said the ant statement was insufferable. Yeah, it was. Yeah, Bella saying Team Asteroid. That's not a bad one to root for. So, excuse me. So, yeah, guys, that's actually it for us today. We are all caught up. I think I got everybody caught up. So yeah, there's no more. There's not going to be a retrial. And yeah, I got nothing else for you today. Just probably another yawn. So I just said that. But yes, that is it, guys. And like I said, tomorrow night we will be doing the ghost gun carving over on Rumble because we can't do it here. I will leave things about it down below or down on the community page. And also today coming out is the kind of breakdown of what happened to Larry Vickers, the famous gun tuber personality, and why he ended up having to play out to a couple of serious felony charges. So I want to thank everybody on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, and YouTube. Guys, all your comments I greatly appreciate. I appreciate your time and your company. Also, thank you to everybody who sent a super chat or became a member. I certainly appreciate that as well. And I will leave you with until next time. Just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. I mean, except for the Stafford brothers. I mean, they did hit the guy, so they're guilty of something. Just a little bit. Like, Torgo says, when is the Vickers coming out again? Once I get it done formatting, it'll be going up. So within the hour, probably. All right. So good night, everybody, and take care.